welcome to Sarah's Stamper Retreat. Today I'm going to be taking you through some stenciling techniques. Some of you might know that I do some commissions for magazines, and I got asked to do a commission for this Tonic Studios magazine. So I'm going to take you through the cards that I created for the magazine, show you how to create them. So this magazine comes with a whole range of things included. So you get these lovely papers in the centre of the magazine. I really love this pattern. So lots of bits to cut out and lots of bits to kind of use as backgrounds and focal points as well. So then it starts again, so you get everything twice. Then there's also this stamp collection. So some sweet little stamps there. You get this really cool die set that you can use to create this flower stand, but obviously you can use all of these on their own as well. So you've got a little umbrella, you've got a heart, you've got some little flower bunting, all these little tiny flowers. You could use the stand and create it into all sorts of different types of stand as well. So you could really think outside the box in how you use those. And you also get this stencil. I was asked to focus on using this stencil and creating cards using stenciling techniques for this particular magazine. So I'm going to be using this mostly in this video. So for this first card, I'm going to create a circular card. So I've got these Carnation Craft Circle layering dies, and I've used this die that is the 7th largest to cut out these two white circles that we'll use as the card base. And these two white circles are near enough 5 inches each. And I've cut those out of the Stampin' Up! Thick white cardstock. And then I've also cut out this one. So this circle measures 4 inches. And you'll see there's only actually a small gap between each of these, which is why I love this layering circle set, because you can do really small layers or large layers, and there's always one that is the size that you want. So when I do stuff for magazines, I also often get a colour palette to use. So for this particular one, it's like a deep green and then some deep pinks and purples. So I'm going to use this Distress Oxide Pine Needles ink. So I'm going to rub my blending tool onto there, and then I'm going to just lay this on that smaller circle, and I'm just going to rub that through there. I'm just trying to be really careful not to get it through any of the other holes. So I just want all the leaves to kind of be going outwards from the centre of this piece. So I'm going to use this large leaf next. So then I'm just actually going to use some masking sheet on this, because these bits get quite close to the leaf. Then I don't want to accidentally go through those pieces. So I'm just going to cover up the piece around this leaf. And you can use it, see this is masking sheet I've used before. Then I'm going to do exactly the same, just rub this on here, and I'll rub it through here. And then I'm going to do this leaf next. I'm using different leaves from across the template, just so that I get lots of different sizes and a bit of variety. And then I might use that one again over here. And then I'm also going to add in a few of these smaller ones. So then we've got this nice pattern on our card. So then I've got some scraps of white cardstock, and I'm going to use this centre flower. So I'm just going to mask off the outside of it. Then I'm going to use the Spun Sugar Distress Oxide ink. So I'm using a circular motion on the ink pad, and I'm also using a circular motion to put it on the flower. And I'm going to use this small one, and I'm going to take some of the Festive Berries ink, and I'm just going to put that in the centre of the flower. And when I lift it up, you can see we've got this lovely two-tone flower. So then I'm going to make another one of those. You can see I'm just using this paper that is the offcuts from the circles that we cut. So you can see here, where I haven't stuck my stencil down, and usually I would stick it down, it's slipped a little bit, and I've got this slightly blurred effect. And normally if I was creating something, then I would start again. I wouldn't use this flower, but I'm going to cut this one out, so I'm going to cut around those bits so it doesn't make a difference for this project. So I'm just going to use this flower. So I'm just cutting it down the sides and then up the next petal. And stenciling is actually a really lovely tool to use if you don't want any lines, because obviously if I was doing this with stamping, then I would have the lines from the stamp. There's that one, and then I can just cut this one out as well. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to curve those petals a little bit with my nail. I'm not pulling too hard because I don't want to pull the petals off. I just want a nice curve to them so they're not as flat. And what I'm going to do is put a dimensional in the middle of this one, and then I'm going to layer this one on top. I'm going to just offset it. Then I've cut another circle out of this really pretty Princess Pink pearlescent card from Tonic, and I've used the circle die that's one size bigger than the one I used to cut this. So that's just under 4¼ inches. So it just leaves that small border around the outside. And then I want to add this pearl to the centre of my flower, but I want it to be a dark pink. So I'm going to use my dark polished pink stamping blend from Stampin' Up. And because it's an alcohol marker, I can just colour over this pearl and create a nice bright pink pearl. That pearl only needs a couple of seconds to dry. And then because my pearl's not quite as big as this centre gap, I'm just going to colour this centre gap in pink as well. I mean, if you don't have any pearls, you could just leave it as this coloured centre, but I like the dimension that the pearl gives. And then it is a self-adhesive pearl, but because I've had it on my finger, then it might have taken a bit of the sticky off, so I'm going to just pop a dab of glue in there as well. So then I can add that into the centre of my flower. And that looks really nice, and it's got the dimension because we've curved the leaves a little bit and we've got this bit in the centre. So I'm going to use this Keep On Shining stamp from this stamp set. So then I'm going to use my VersaMark ink, and I'm just going to stamp that onto this piece of Stampin' Up shaded spruce cardstock. And then I'm just going to, got my white embossing powder in here, I'm just going to pour that over. Now I'm going to grab my heat tool. And you can see now it's gone shiny and it's all melted. And I just want to cut that about here. I'm just going to cut that on a diagonal. So then to create my circle card blank, I'm going to just pop this at the 1/2 inch mark, and I'm going to just cut off that 1/2 inch at the top. And the reason I've done that is so that this is going to be the back of the card, and then it will stand up better, whereas if both the front and the back are rounded, then it will wobble. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up at the 4 inch mark, so that this line here is the 4 inch mark, and line that up there. And then I'm just going to use my score tool just to score across there. So then I can fold on that line, and then I'm going to pop some glue just above that line. I'm just using my trusty Tombow glue. And then I'm just going to use the other circle as the front of my card. So I'm going to line that up, and I'm just going to add that to the front. So there's my card blank, and so that will stand up like that. So then I'm going to assemble the topper. So I'm going to glue these two circles together. And then I just want to add this in the centre of those leaves. And then I'm using some dimensionals for this, and I'm just going to add a few along here. And then I'm going to tuck this underneath some of those petals. And I can see when I add that onto there that it's sticking out too far across the edge of the card. So I'm just going to crop that that green piece a bit shorter. I think that looks better now. So I'm going to stand up the card so that I know which way it sits. So I don't want it to go on wonky. And then I'm going to add glue to the back of here. And then I'm going to add this to the front of my card like this, just to make sure that it's up the right way. Then that's our first card finished. So then for my second card, I'm going to squeeze a bit of VersaMark ink refill onto here. And you could actually use the your VersaMark ink pad if you don't have a refill, but I prefer the refill because it allows me to get a bit more ink onto the sponge. So I'm just using, you can see this really discoloured, it's like a smoothie sponge. I'm just going to dab that in there, and then I'm just going to pop this flower in the centre of my card. So I've got a DL card blank, and that's made of the white smooth card from Tonic. I'm just going to pounce this over here, and this white card is 300 GSM, so it's nice quality for card bases. So I've got my flower, which you probably won't be able to see on the camera because it's kind of white on white. And then I'm just going to do some leaves around there. So I'm just going to do the exact same thing and just pounce through the leaves. And then I'll use this one here as well. And then I'll do some more down the other end as well. So then I'm going to pour some clear embossing powder all over that. So this is nice Stampin' Up clear embossing powder. And I'm going to shake that down so it comes off the other end. And then it will cover the whole card. So I'm just going to use my heat tool to melt all that embossing powder. I don't know if you'll be able to pick that up on camera now. It's now shiny where we've stenciled through. So then I want to use the emboss resist technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of the Festive Berries ink first. This is the Distress Oxide ink. And I'm going to just apply this in the centre of the flower. And then I'm going to take my Spun sugar one. And I'm going to blend that like round the outside in a bit of a circle of the pink that I've just put on. And where that's covered up some of this dark pink, I do want actually a little bit more dark pink than that, so I'm going to go back in again with my dark pink and put a bit more on that. That's the thing, you can kind of play with the colours and just add more or less where you need it. And then I'm going to take this cracked pistachio in, and I'm going to go around the outside of the pink with the cracked pistachio. And then I'm going to use the pine needles just on the edges. And then I'm going to go back inwards again with the colours, so I'm going to go a little bit of cracked pistachio just here, just to blend in with that, I'm just doing it along the blend line, and the spun sugar again. So then I've got a very slightly damp piece of kitchen roll, and I'm just getting all that excess ink off the embossing, and that'll really help that to stand out. You can see now that really stands out off the card. So then I've got some Nuvo Jewel Drops in Strawberry Coulis colour. So I'm going to add that into the centre of here, just to make a big centre flower. So I'm going to take some of this shaded spruce ink, and I'm going to stamp Hello Summer onto a scrap of white cardstock. So I decided I thought it'd look better with less pink, so I've just gone over that a bit with more cracked pistachio. So now I've got my cut down sentiment, and I'm just going to glue that onto a piece of shaded spruce cardstock. It's like 1/4 of an inch bigger. So I'm going to add that on with some dimensionals. And then I'm going to add some of these drops just around as well. So that's that card completed. So I forgot to press record when I was making this flower, but I thought we're going to do very similar with the leaves, so I'm not going to re-record it. So what I did for the flower was that I took some of my white embossing paste, that's Stampin' Up! Embossing paste, and a couple of drops of my Melon Mambo re-inker. I mix them together on a block, and then I use my stencil to pop that onto my paper. So this is the Tonic white cardstock, but the actual technique to put it on is the same as we're going to use just now with the leaves, so I thought you probably wouldn't need me to do it again. So for this second bit with the leaves, I'm going to use the Nuvo Embellishment Mousse, and this one is Aquamarine. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the mousse on my palette knife, and I'm just going to spread that through the piece of the stencil that I want to use, just like you would butter. And then I'm going to pop another one this side as well. You can see that I got a bit here that I didn't want there, but that's okay. We'll pop another leaf over there in a second so that it kind of blends in. Then I'm just going to leave that to dry for a minute, because you don't want to start anything that overlaps until that's fully dry, because otherwise it will start smudging. And the other thing is that I'm going to go and wash these. I can get the rest of this green into this pot, but even though I'm going to use them again in a minute, I need to wash them, because otherwise it's going to dry rock hard on there and I won't get it off. So now that those leaves are touch dry, I'm going to use this smaller leaf just to add a little bit more texture onto this. And add another one over here. So I've stamped the hello sentiment, that hello's from the included set in the magazine. Now I'm just going to cut around that with my scissors. And I'm actually going to stick this strategically over this piece that I've smudged here, and that helps that look a bit cleaner. I'm going to put that on with some dimensionals or double-sided favourites. Now I'm going to use this pale pink of Nuvo drops, it's called Bubblegum Blush, to just fill in this centre piece. And I'm going to leave a little bit around the edge so it looks like it's part of the stenciled design. And then I'm also going to use this to add a few drops all around, and I'm going to put some of them a bit strategically so that they cover up some mistakes that I've made, and then other ones just to kind of balance them out. And then normally I would wait for this to dry before I started gluing, but just to finish off the card, I've got a 4 1/4 inch piece of Melon Mambo card here, and you can see I've smudged this embellishment paste all the way over it, but that's fine because we're going to actually cover that bit up anyway. So I'm just adding some glue to the back of there, and I'm being really careful not to smudge my drops that I've just put on. And then I'm just going to add a bit of glue behind here as well to complete my card. So that's then our third card completed. So then for this next card, I've got an A6 basic white card blank. So that is 8 1/4 by 5 7/8 inches scored and folded in half. And I've got my pine needles and cracked pistachio ink. So I'm going to go in with the in with the cracked pistachio first, and I'm going to go all over this. So I'm going to create like a kind of ombre style effect. And I actually find that these Distress Oxide inks for me are probably the easiest ones to get a smooth blend with. Personally, I don't like them as much for stamping, so I mostly use them for blending. I absolutely love the way that they blend. But I think a lot of people like different types of inks for different things. You'll see I've got a pretty smooth blend with very little effort. So let's go back in with a bit of cracked pistachio just over that blend line. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my stencil, and I'm going to grab, this is just a baby wipe, but you could use like a damp cloth or a damp piece of kitchen towel, whatever you've got on hand. And I'm just going to dab that through the stencil. And these wet wipes that I'm using are actually just water wipes, so they've not got anything special to them. And you see how it's lifted some of the ink off there? So let's go in with another one. I just want a nice leafy pattern all in the background of this. So I'm going in with different sizes and all in different directions to get a nice kind of background effect. And the other thing I would say when you're doing a technique like this is just make sure some of them go off the side, because otherwise it can kind of look a bit like everything's clumped in the middle. You want a bit more of a natural look. So then you can see we've got that nice tone on tone leafy background. So then I've got here a flower that I've done with embossing paste, and I did it for the card earlier, but because I made a couple of little mistakes I couldn't use it for that card because that I was using the whole square. But I've decided that I'm going to use it for this card. I'm going to cut it out so that you won't really notice the imperfections on it. And that looks so pretty with the contrast on there. So then I'm going to just heat emboss the hello sentiment. And I'm just heat embossing that onto a bit of Stampin' Up shaded spruce cardstock. And I'm just going to emboss that with some white embossing powder. So I heat that up with my heat tool. So I've just cut that down, so I'm going to pop that on there. And use some dimensionals for this. And then I'm just going to pop a dimensional on the back here as well. And then I'm going to take some of this Bubblegum blush Nuvo drops, and I'm just going to pop some of that into the middle of my flower. And there we go. Okay, so for my final video today, I've got a piece of cardstock measuring 7 by 3.5 inches, and I'm going to do some traditional stenciling on that, or what I think of traditional stenciling anyway, because I kind of think of traditional stenciling as kind of drawing through the stencil. So I've got this Pigma Micron 03 pen, and I'm just going to draw around this image. I mean, to be fair, this probably actually isn't traditional stenciling. Traditional stenciling is probably painting through a stencil. I think this is what I used to do like when I was a kid, so I kind of think of this as being like the first thing I did with stenciling. And I'm going to pop on a couple of these smaller flowers. So I'll put one there and maybe another one just here. And then I'm going to do some leaves. So I'm going to take this big leaf and I'm going to stencil it, so you can see I'm overlapping the flowers. But what I'm going to do is that I'm only going to go on the bit that doesn't have flower on it. So you can see there I've just stopped where the petal is. Pop another one here. And let's pop in some smaller ones as well, so let's go with this one next. And I'll fill out the other side as well. So then I've got this, which looks a bit of a hot mess at the moment, but we'll change that soon enough. Then I've got 3 Stampin' Right markers that I'm going to use to colour this in. So I've got Melon Mambo, Shaded Spruce and Blushing Bride. But you could use anything to colour this in really. All I'm going to do is put down some flat colour, so you don't need anything special. These ones are water-based markers. You could use your alcohol markers, you could use it whatever you want really. I'm going to use the Blushing Bride for the smaller flowers. And then I'll use the Shaded Spruce for all the leaves. You can see it's starting to come together now that it's coloured. And then I'm going to use this Hello Summer stamp. So then I've got a piece of Melon Mambo cardstock that is 3 3/4 inches by 7 1/4 inches, and a DL white card blank. So we'll use those in a second, but first I'm going to pop this Hello Summer sentiment on here. So I'm just popping that on in my VersaMark ink. Then I'm going to pour over the white embossing powder. And then I'm going to heat that up with my heat tool. So let's glue this all together. And I'm going to add some dimensionals to the back of my sentiment. And then I'm just going to finish it off with some of the Bubblegum Blush Nuvo drops. I'm just going to go into the centre of the flowers with them, and that will just help those flowers stand out a bit more. So that's my final card complete. So let's put that to one side and bring the others in. So that's all 5 of today's cards. And really we've only focused on the stencil for these cards. So you've also got the stamp set, the die set, all the papers. You've got loads that you can do with this kit. So I think you do get a lot for your money. So I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video. If you did, then I'd appreciate you clicking like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the notification button and select all, then you'll also get notifications from YouTube when I've got a new video available. I've linked the key products that we've used today in the description below. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.